Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, setting the record straight about climate. I use this animation pretty often in my videos and blog posts. It shows how NASA has altered the U.S. temperature data to turn a long-term cooling trend into a warming trend. Thermometers show that 1934 was the hottest year in U.S. history. But since 1999, NASA has massively changed their data to cool the past and warm recent years. They create the appearance of warming via data tampering. Now I'm going to show you how they use the tampered data to create propaganda. There's a story being circulated that this is the warmest winter in U.S. history so far. And it's based on this graph of December and January temperatures from NOAA. The graph released by NOAA shows December and January as being the warmest on record. So now let's look at the actual temperature data before NOAA tampers with it. This is the thermometer data for December and January from NOAA's United States Historical Climatology Network. The thermometer data shows that 1934 was the warmest year and that this year was comparable with many other years in the past. And if we go back to the animation, you can see how they cooled 1934. So the propaganda, which was generated from this graph, depends on the data tampering, because the thermometer data shows that December and January were warmest in 1934, not 2020. This graph shows December-January maximum daily temperatures. 1934 was about 2 degrees warmer than this year, and this year wasn't even in the top 20. This graph shows the December-January percent of days above 50 degrees Fahrenheit in the United States. You can see that the past December-January was not particularly warm and actually wasn't even much above average. The U.S. has had dozens of winters with more warm weather than this year. The NOAA claim that December and January were the warmest on record doesn't stand up to any scrutiny. It's propaganda, not science. But graphs can be boring. Let's look at some old maps from the U.S. Weather Bureau. This was the January 1934 temperature anomaly map from the U.S. Weather Bureau, published in 1934. You can see that almost the entire U.S. was red hot, with temperature anomalies in the Pacific Northwest as much as 20 degrees above normal. Compare that to this year when the Pacific Northwest has been buried in snow and record cold. And December 1933 was very similar. It was extremely warm across most of the United States. This is the history which NOAA and NASA are erasing with their data tampering. This article from Spokane, Washington is dated January 1st, 1934. It discussed the phenomenal warmth of December 1933. Blooming buttercups, pussy willows, golfers playing almost without interruption. Again, this is the U.S. history which NOAA is erasing via data tampering. And the warmth wasn't just in the U.S. South America was having record heat that month too. The LA Times reported in 1934, cold, heat, drought, and flood set new marks. Unprecedented extremes recorded in every corner of the earth. How science accounts for berserk elements. Assign reasons vary from spots on the sun to concurrences of meteorological cycles. The chief meteorologist of the U.S. Weather Bureau said, worldwide drought is seen likely. Weatherman admits there's something wrong and that no one knows why. Data tampering by NOAA erases all of this history. The worldwide drought caused farmers to be ruined everywhere, almost universal disaster. Europe revives pagan rites. The difference between the 1934 pagans and the current ones is that in 1934 there actually was a climate crisis. England had their worst drought for nearly 100 years in 1934. Here's what the always alarmist Guardian had to say on May 12, 1934. Freak weather in the United States. Heatwave and drought hit the farmers. High temperatures in Britain. January 1934 was record warm in the United States and was also very hot in Australia with lots of bushfires. Now we're going to look at another very warm winter from the 1930s, in 1932. The 1932 Winter Olympics were held at Lake Placid, New York, and almost had to be canceled because it was too warm and there was no snow. This is a picture of the ski jump for the 1932 Winter Olympics. All the snow on the ski jump was brought in by truck. This was the U.S. Weather Bureau temperature anomaly map from February 1932 when the Olympics were held. You can see that that month was extremely warm across most of the U.S. with temperature anomalies as high as 10 degrees above normal. On February 10, 1932, temperatures in Illinois were recorded as high as 83 degrees at Whitehall. Could you imagine the hysteria among climate alarmists now if we had 83-degree temperatures this week in Illinois? This is what the LA Times reported on January 16, 1932. Lake Placid, New York. Rain today wiped away the last vestiges of snow from the Winter Olympics. New York, with a high temperature of 66 degrees at 4 p.m. today, New York enjoyed the third successive day of record January warm weather. New York actually hit 70 degrees that week for their official temperature. Lake Placid is buried in snow right now, and there's lots of cold forecast for the United States for the rest of the month. We've had so much snow here in Colorado, I had to give up on my road bike and go out and buy a mountain bike. Interstate 70 is shut down for 44 miles tonight west of Denver because of too much snow. When NOAA and NASA tamper with temperature data like they do, they are destroying U.S. history and destroying world history too. And then their data tampering is the basis of propaganda like this article. We see these fake articles being put out day after day, which form the foundation of climate alarmism. And then climate alarmism becomes the basis of policy. The small group of people at NASA and NOAA who are doing this data tampering are not data scientists, and they're not qualified to be working with this data set. They lack the necessary skills, and they have a fundamental conflict of interest. The people who are tampering with the data are climate modelers. They want to see a certain specific result, and by altering the data, they are getting the result they want to see. George Orwell said, "The most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history." And that is exactly what climate alarmists are doing. They're erasing America's hot past. Visit Toto on the web at realclimatescience.com. He's been pulling back the curtain on junk science and propaganda for a long time.